Have you ever wondered if your own money mindset is getting in the way of how you run your business or how you serve your clients? Well, in today's episode, I have Meenadchi, an ancestral healing practitioner, discussing the impact of intergenerational trauma on personal behavior, particularly in relationship to money. In this conversation, we explore her background, the significance of family constellation therapy, and the importance of understanding trauma to improve relationships with money, clients, and everyone in your life. So I hope you grab a notebook because there's definitely some actionable strategies to take away from here, especially if you are the journaling type. And I hope this is illuminating and somewhat validating for you as it was for me. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Serena, CPA, a mom of three, and I've been running a virtual bookkeeping business from my home since 2017. You are in the right place if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you believe and know in your heart that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies for starting and growing your accounting business, then I hope you stick around. Welcome back to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. Today I have a wonderful guest on. Her name is Meenadchi. I knew I was going to stumble over my words with that one, even though I practiced it like 50 times. But yeah, so we met through a mutual, a networking group that we're a part of, the Creme de la Creme group, which is small but mighty so far. I love all the connections I've made inside of that group. And we ended up on a call, just the two of us pretty much, and decided to have you on the podcast because I'm trying to focus a lot more on not just, my audience is bookkeepers and accountants, but that I want to bring to them and make them aware of in life, because all of that contributes to your business. So this is going to be one of those episodes. We're going to get more personal and I guess mindset related, I guess is the term that people might relate to more. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Thank you for having me. I'm Meenadchi, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an ancestral healing practitioner. So the body is my jam, and thinking about how trauma is stored in the body and how that shapes our behavior. And then really specifically looking at what is the intergenerational trauma, right? Like what is it that our ancestors have navigated? What is it that they've experienced? And then have sort of accidentally or unintentionally passed down to us, so that even though we may not have faced a specific hardship or a specific crisis, why is it that we're constantly stressed about it? Why is it that we're constantly panicking about it? Why is it that our nervous system is reacting in certain ways to different things in our life that sometimes isn't actually about things we've navigated, but it's related to what our people have been through? And a lot of that comes back to money. A lot of people have, even if I just say the word, I would invite listeners to take a moment and notice, does your body start to contract or does your body start to expand? And if you start to contract, it probably means there's some gunky stuff in your body in relationship to money. And so how do we heal that so we can have a good relationship with money?
Yeah. And that's why I was really excited to bring you on the podcast because, my listeners, we all work with money. And this is something that I cover. I wouldn't say gloss over it, but I don't cover it in super depth inside of my programs, but I do address our money stuff because I think it's really important as bookkeepers and accountants to find a balance between our training and being skeptical and having more of that mindset of control over money and all that kind of stuff versus just being more open and trusting a process and all of that. So I was really excited to bring you on to dive into the money topic and wherever else this may go.
Yeah.
So Can you talk a little bit about your journey and what led you to doing this work?
Gosh, my journey has been such a hodgepodge. I'm like the opposite of a bookkeeper. I like grew up like super all over the place, artsy, this, and that. You know what I mean? So I have led a very eclectic life. I think it feels like the right word to say. Very much not the tried and true path of like, this is what I'm supposed to do, climbing the corporate ladder or whatever. But I am first generation. So my family is from Sri Lanka. And so growing up, war back home started 3 days after I was born. And so conversations about trauma, conversations about family, and just thinking about those things were very everyday, commonplace sort of things in the household. So I grew up really thinking about like, what is the impact on our body? What is the impact on our behavior? And then after college, I was in the arts for a number of years, and then a few different things happened, life pivoted, and I started working more intentionally in trauma. So I was working in suicide prevention and then rape crisis advocacy, and I was good at it. I was just real good at it. I could hold space for a lot of different stuff. And then, long story short, through a bunch of different windings and weavings, I wound up encountering this modality called family constellation therapy. And it's a modality to clear intergenerational trauma from the nervous system. And I just loved it. I just loved it. I saw it have like incredible results in a much shorter period of time than conventional talk
Mhm.
therapy. And for folks who are less familiar with the concept of what intergenerational trauma is, I'm going to share my very
Please.
favorite geeky fact. My very favorite geeky fact is that all of us existed in our grandmother's bellies. So, like my grandmother, my amama, or rather, my amma, I don't want to say this. My grandmother got pregnant in like February of 1953. My amma was born. My mother was born in October 53. So my amma got pregnant, would have been in like February-ish, I think. And so then when my amma was around 5 months in utero is when the reproductive system comes online, which means that the eggs, the cells that became me and my siblings, have been around since June of 1953. Like the cells that shape my
Mhm.
body have been picking up information since June of 1953, which then means that any of the stressors my grandmother was navigating as her nervous system was impacted, it would have shaped the way my genes were being encoded in
Mhm.
utero. So that's kind of like a glimpse of what intergenerational trauma is. And it means that we can get activated, like have quicker stress responses based on things. And so coming back to family constellation therapy and the work, we're carrying stories inside of our bodies. We're carrying beliefs that we didn't realize that we had inherited. And we're carrying just ways of moving through the world, patterns in our relationships that,
Mhm.
again, oftentimes didn't start with us. And if we are only looking at our lifetime, we're not going to get to the root. And if we don't get to the root, then the pattern won't change. So that's the longish winded answer of how I got here.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that and and giving all that background. I think it's really important for people to understand. That's epigenetics. If anyone was not familiar with it, they are now. That was a great explanation. I learned about that probably about a decade ago because I worked at a biotech company and we,
Mm.
did some stuff around DNA. And so I learned about that kind of accidentally and in passing, but it makes a lot of sense. I have a question about like when you work with people doing this family constellation therapy, that's what you call it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you work on clearing current trauma first? Or like, do you unpack the generational trauma and see if that heals whatever this person has been through in this current lifetime as well? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we are always looking at what is the present pattern and then how does that relate to what happened previously. So for example, right now I teach every year I teach a healing money trauma program and it tends to be small business owners because I feel like I don't know any small business owner who just has a quote, quote, easy time with pricing their services. People get all kinds of weird
Mhm.
stuff talking about money. You know what I mean? And like, um, something, for example, that's very, very common amongst the women who come through this program and who work with me is that people are often navigating things like, I don't want to make too much money because if I make too much money, I'm going to be very visible. And if I'm very visible, something bad is going to happen to me. And people don't necessarily know that off the top, right? They just know, I don't want
Right.
to be too big. They have this energy of like, I don't want too much. But
Mhm.
once we start digging, it's oh, I had a grandmother who was really successful. And then people in her village and in her neighborhood started getting really jealous, and then because she was more successful than her husband, it like destroyed the marriage, and like all of these kind of like ripple effects of like, what is it that's actually living in your body that's making it so that you feel more or less comfortable expressing desire to be seen or to be big. So the answer kind of to the question is, we're all in this particular form of therapy, we're always looking at what is it that's behind the current pattern of behavior that's sort of like setting the stage for this behavior. Because when we clear the root, the pattern can shift.
Oh, right. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So finding the pattern tends to be, is that the hard part?
I think about it, for me, it feels I think it's hard if you're doing it alone. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, especially when you're alone, like there's things that your body knows. Like for example, today I had a client session this morning, and I started asking certain questions, and all of a sudden she remembered something that had happened to her great grandmother. Like when her great grandmother was 15, her great grandmother had experienced this pretty scary thing of like semi being kidnapped and then being tricked and going to jail in a country that she was not from. It was a really, really, I was like, as I was listening to it, I was like, this is so scary.
Yeah.
And my client had never connected those dots of like how that fear lived in her, and how, because with this particular client, what we're working on is separating fear and intuition so that she can just trust her intuition
Mm,
instead of like getting confused about what should I do and then doing the thing, even though your body's like, go in this direction, but you're like, I can't tell the difference. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And so, kind of like some of what we found was that her great grandmother had experienced something really horrifying and horrific, and then raised everybody else to be really, really afraid of the world. And she hadn't connected some of those dots. So we wound up doing like this really lovely release blessing from like within the lineage. And by the end of the session, she felt a lot more connected to her intuition, and also, a little bit less charge around fear. Fear is there for a purpose. It's there to help us, but it's not really, it shouldn't hinder us.
Right.
So some of those are kind of like the changes that can happen, I think, when we're in conversation with someone who's asking questions that help us unpack what we actually already know.
Yeah, absolutely. Just triggering, even just you explaining this process and this story triggered a story that I remember my mom telling me that happened before I was born. So I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah,
Whoa.
it does. It's super powerful to just like, yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, you need that second person to like help draw it out of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, where do I want to go next with this? I'm like, I have so many questions.
Can I share a
Yeah.
thought that has been, yeah, I think that I've worked with some bookkeepers before, and kind of like in tandem, because a lot of times I think that something that's sort of important for folks to understand is that like when your client isn't completing a task, like when your client isn't sending the documents that they need to send, or is being like hyper avoidant with your emails, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily because clients don't want to do the work, but if there's trauma preventing them from looking at their numbers, if there's trauma that's preventing them from being willing to be successful, you know what I mean, then
Yeah.
that can shape the way clients are showing up to your sessions. And similarly, bookkeepers are small business owners, and you deserve to be well. I love my bookkeeper. My bookkeeper is gold for me. I am so happy and delighted to pay her every month because of the way she keeps my business running. So then also on that side, as a small business owner, just like the reminder that you're allowed to be nourished, you're allowed to be paid well, you're allowed to have clients who celebrate the service that you do and that you don't have to work with for peanuts.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such an important point that you make about clients being non-responsive and things like that. I I see conversations happen so much. It happens within my team even, the frustration that we get when clients don't send us the documents we need. And it's like they're not doing it at us.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them a bad client. Doesn't make them unworthy of our service. It's like you said, you have to have a level of understanding. For one, they are a busy entrepreneur. And for two, there might actually be some trauma behind. I can give an example of a client who month after month she pays for the service for us to do her bookkeeping. Obviously, she pays the bill, no questions asked. Part of her service package is she gets her reports and a monthly video going over her reports. And for almost a year, she did not open those videos because she knew what was in there. And so she was avoiding it. And finally, I had to step in and be like, there is no judgment here. I just want you to survive. So let's get on a call. Let's go over this together and come up with a game plan. And sometimes that's all clients need. So don't just go willy-nilly firing all the clients that don't get you the stuff they need. They might just
Mm.
need a little compassion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on that.
It's a good 2 cents.
Because
It's
I
a
could have
really
fired her because she wasn't like responding. I mean, she's not a client that doesn't get us our information, but it was just like she wasn't utilizing what we were doing for her. And we truly care. We want to make sure our clients are successful. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they're getting the information and approaching it in a way that doesn't make them feel judged, because that's just it's going to make it even worse.
money brings up, I mean, money, people judge themselves for,
Mhm.
money brings up a lot of shame. Money brings up a lot of shame stuff, and that can be hard to wrestle with.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anyone listening, don't go fire your clients for not getting you the information. Just have a conversation with them. Dig deeper. There's probably a reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I also love having people on the podcast who aren't bookkeepers and accountants and sharing how much they love their bookkeepers
Yeah.
and value the
I
service, because
know.
so many of my students and listeners feel like nobody values bookkeeping. It's just
Oh,
compliance. And I'm like, there's actual value in being compliant. And some people won't value it. That's true. But so many people actually do. And there is plenty of clients out there that are able and willing to pay for the service.
one of the things I really teach my clients, so a lot of my clients, I would say it's like 50-50. Like there's the clients who are terrified of making more money and like have some type of hang up about being paid well. And then there's the clients who tend to be a little bit more restrictive with their spending and are terrified of paying people money. And I have 5 foundational principles of money, which I might share in a moment, but I always encourage people to pay for good services because it puts you in your zone of genius. And one of the foundational principles of money is that it has to be in flow. Money is a lot like blood, that if blood is hoarded, if blood isn't able to move through the body, illness is going to emerge. And similarly, if blood is hemorrhaging from the body, it's just spilling out willy-nilly all over the place, illness is going to emerge, right? Blood needs to just be able to move in healthy circulation wherever it needs to go. And money is the same. If money is hoarded, illness emerges. If money is splurgy, illness emerges. Money needs to move throughout society wherever it needs to go. And as a small business owner, you have to put money to good use. You can't just like stockpile it and try and like Scrooge McDuck it because
Yeah.
it's not going to work. Pay people to do good work so that you can be in your zone of genius and they can be in their zone of genius.
Yeah. There's one area with that that tends to come up, and again, could absolutely be like an ancestral thing, but a lot of my business owner clients and even bookkeepers and accountants, because we need to pay for services as well so that we can do our work, is the fear and frustration, I guess. I don't know, other feelings that probably pop up around hiring the right person or having a bad experience and being like, oh, I should just do it myself.
Yeah.
I can't find good people. It's like,
Yeah.
well, not with that mindset.
Yeah.
Not with that attitude. So have you experienced anything with your clients when you start digging into the money stuff with that as well? Like,
A lot, a
okay.
lot. Because as you can imagine, right, even when we say it, right, people who know how to survive, people who know how to make it through, self-reliance is a big, big survival strategy. But it is not a strategy you can stick with forever. It does not create sustainable peace to have to hold. Oh, I can see your face changing.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to cry.
Uh-huh. And any survival strategy, most survival strategies are things that someone else in our lineage has experienced before. We're not the first person to experience pain. It's kind of like you wouldn't have such a big reaction to something if it was the first time it kind of happened. Like if you can imagine the first time anything happening. I can't think of like a really good example right now because I'm thinking about is how many times I've been bitten by a mosquito. And so if I even hear the little buzz, right, of a mosquito, my nervous system goes on fire and I'm terrified. But I don't know if it was as strong right the first time I was bitten by a mosquito. And so the same way, if you have a tendency to hyper self-reliance, chances are other people in your lineage have had to use that survival strategy, which is why you go to it so quickly and so fast. And while it may get you through the most immediate thing you need to get through, it's not going to help you build the life you actually want to be in, because ultimately the life we want to be in is one that allows space for rest, one that allows space for ease, and one that really allows us to be with people who love us in like a loving, we just want to be with people we care about.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise, from someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that one really hit home.
Do you
I'm
want to share
sure it
any
will
more?
for someone else listening as well. But yeah, that is exactly, I go to self-reliance when things aren't done the way that I want them, or a big thing for me is everyone has their values, right? One of my values is people keeping their word and doing what they say they're going to do. And so the first time someone doesn't, the walls go up.
Yeah.
The walls go up. I then am like, well, can never rely on this person again. So
Yeah.
definitely a survival tactic, but it does make sense. Like when I think back to some of the stories I've heard from my parents and grandparents, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I love about constellation work, so constellation work is pretty woo. You know what I mean? I think about it as functional woo because we're functionally looking to meet a goal to change behavior to make life better. But one of the underlying principles is that there really is a constant source of love available to us. And our work is to remove any limitation or any block to receiving that love. And it's the idea that our family members, even if they act like shits, that behavior came from something that they hurt people. They experienced their own thing that made them show up in a way that was less loving towards us. And if we can release some of that trauma or integrate the trauma, that sense of love is more accessible. And you don't have to know your family to do this work. I work with a lot of people who are either like estranged from their family, because I work in a lot of queer communities. So folks who just haven't had the fortune of having parents who love them regardless. And then also folks who are adopted. It doesn't matter, because the work is actually nervous system work about what is your body holding. And if you're here, then we know that you've got ancestors, you've got a
Yeah.
lineage, you know what I mean? And the ability to make that kind of peace is really, really powerful. Peace is powerful. And I think that, again, like the essence of constellation work is allowing ourselves to believe that somewhere something makes sense, and I don't have to hold more baggage than is actually mine to hold.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just thinking through so much stuff that, like, when you, like, as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I have an older daughter who has some stuff she's carrying around that I'm like, that's probably from my mom. Having known certain things that my mother went through. And it's like, this is not fun. I wish I would have known about this and healed it before
Oh.
before she was born.
Mm.
Oh man. But we're here now. So
Yeah. And she's lucky to have you.
thank you.
Mhm.
So where do like people go, I guess, to like to start this work? What would you say like is the best first step? Like, especially back to my question before, if they know they have dealt with their own trauma in this lifetime, do you suggest they work through that first, or does it matter what order it goes in if they know they're probably holding on to other stuff too? What would you suggest there?
Yeah. I have two or three things I like to encourage people to do. So, one, if you know your family tree, draw that out really quick, do a quick kind of like map of your family tree. Then identify the issues you tend to sort of like recurrently face, right? So if it's your relationship with money, do you go through cycles of feast and famine? Do you self-sabotage? Like, what are the patterns that happen for you? Or if it's in like romantic relationships, what are the patterns that happen very consistently in those dynamics, right? So kind of like make a note of like on like a side piece of paper, right? Write down what your patterns are. And then I say, give each pattern a shape, right? So like a triangle for this, a star, a heart, whatever. And then start working backwards in what you know of your family history. And if you know that that pattern existed with like your mom, then put like a little heart, right? And if X pattern existed with your dad, put a little triangle next to your dad. And then keep working backwards within the family tree. And that can be like surprisingly illuminating, because suddenly you're like, whoa, there's like 5 people before me who have this triangle. You know what I mean? And it like, but one of the things that it can do is it takes a little bit of the pressure off, because sometimes we can feel like it's just me, it's my fault. Why can't I fix it? What's wrong with me? You know what I mean? But when we can look and actually see that there's like 5 generations before us who have been holding this particular dynamic. And yes, we do want to shift it. We do want to change it. It's not your fault. You know what I mean? Like, these were the cards that you were given. I think that can be really, really helpful. And then if you're not in super strong relationship with your family, or if you don't have access to that information, start thinking about who you do identify as your lineage. And I have like a very expansive definition of that. So I will encourage clients to think about nature as an ancestor, right? To think about trees, to think about poetry even, and like, people that you have loved in that way, like musicians and artists that you've loved. And put yourself at the center of a piece of paper and kind of like, again, sketch out that lineage that you know what I mean? And then to think about like, what do all of these members of my lineage wish for me? and to like draw that in. What are their wishes? What do you believe that they want to have flowing towards you? And then just notice how that feels in your body to be in that kind of connection with ancestry. So those are two things. And I'm going to give one more. If you want to start unpacking your relationship with money, just write a letter to money. See what you wind up saying to money. And then a few days later, like if you write a letter on a Monday, then on a Thursday, have money write a letter back and see what happens. And that can just be the kind of beginning of the unearthing of information that has been sitting in your body for a while.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to come back and listen to this and take some notes and start doing more of the work. Okay. One last question that I like to ask business owners who aren't bookkeepers that come onto the podcast is give our listeners a little bit of maybe tactical advice. I don't know what it ends up being, but just some insight as to, since you said you have a bookkeeper and you really value them, what's one thing that they do that you are like, this is why I work with them? Or if there's something your bookkeeper could be doing that you wish they were doing that would change things and make things for the better, can you share that?
She talks in regular language. I understand what the hell she's saying. I understand. And I think this happens in every field, right? Like even me, when I'm talking about ancestral trauma, I have to be really, really careful because I'm so in my world that I just, right? And then I don't know that I don't always explain it so well to people who aren't in this world. The things that I love about my bookkeeper. One, I can tell she really cares about me. Like she really likes me. I had to go through a few different bookkeepers to find her. She was not my first person. The first bookkeeper I ever had just didn't give me accurate information. It was just wrong about certain things. And I was like, I gotta go. And then I think I worked with someone who just dropped a lot of balls. And I didn't like that. I'm very precise with my things. So I want someone who's on top of it. The next person I went to, I just really felt like a cog in their wheel of business. Like they didn't actually care about me and my business. And then I was really, really fortunate to find Starla. Her name is Starla Beecham of Grasshopper Accounting. And I just love, she's so nice to me. She explains everything really clearly. And sometimes balls get dropped because we're human, but we have enough of a relationship that it never feels personal. It just feels like we're having human moments with each other.
Yeah, that's so important. And that's one of the things that when bookkeepers ask me, like, what if AI takes our jobs and, how do I stand out? And it's like, literally, you just have to care about your clients.
Yeah.
You just have to treat them like people and just show that you care. You don't even have, it's very important to also be accurate. I'm not going to discount that whatsoever, but like if that's the base, that's the bare minimum. Be accurate in what you do. And then it's like, then really all you have to do is care.
Yeah, it's true.
So thank you for confirming that.
Yeah. Thank you for modeling that. There's a very similar energy between my bookkeeper and the way you show up. So
her name sounds familiar. So she may be in my community, but I'll have to go look. So if someone listening is feeling a spark of resonating or whatever with this conversation, where can they find you to learn more, to work with you, see what you have going on?
It's so easy. It's my name, Meenadchi.com. That's going to be the best place to find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and my website will lead you to all those places, but it's Meenadchi.com.
Wonderful. And we will link that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so glad this worked out. I'm so glad we met, and I can't wait for more collaborations. Cool. Have a good one. Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shu. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout. And you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Be ambitious.